Yo, what's up, everyone? I am live with Brian, Master of None, and we are going to be reacting to a classic episode of Kitchen Nightmares. How are you doing tonight, Brian?
I'm doing well. It's been a while since I've watched Kitchen Nightmares, and to be frank, I love me some Gordon Ramsay. I mean, who the hell doesn't? So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this very much so.
Yeah, definitely. My love for Gordon Ramsay started back when he was first introduced to the States. I think it was through his show Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
yeah, like several seasons into that show, then Kitchen Nightmares started to ramp up like in the mid 2000s. And yeah, that's kind of when I started to, get more on board with him and his brand of, entertainment. And that's also when
Yeah,
I started
absolutely.
to enter the workforce, where my first few jobs after high school were at McDonald's, Subway, different retail places, but the food service ones were definitely where you'd have the most fondest memories at. How about you?
Well, I agree on the memories part because I've worked in other jobs and stuff like that. I mean, I worked at an auto shop for almost 8 years, 9 years. It was a long time. So like when it comes to memories and stuff like that, I remember the food that I ate for lunch more so than I actually remember the times that I was, changing oil and stuff like that. It was awful. But like as far as food goes, my first 5 or 6 jobs were either McDonald's or Taco Bell. Uh, I did have a stint at the Secretary of State's office in 2002. That was fun. Um, but that's another story. But
Yeah, no, it's rad that your recent series that has taken off on your channel, Brian, Master of Noms, just talking about all your food memories and stuff, and some of your experiences in the workforce as well, doing food service. Like it really resonated with me, and like that's like a big inspiration for why I wanted to react to Kitchen Nightmares, especially. And you were like my top person to come on and do that with.
awesome.
So yeah, thank you again for coming on.
Heck yeah. What's up, Garguts? Where's the effing lamb sauce, right?
Exactly. What's up, ACS? Good to see you, my man.
I
Yeah,
watched
no.
that first season of Hell's Kitchen. It was so good. And like I hated reality TV at the time. I was like, this is stupid. What am I watching this for? Because like there was a time there for a while where it was like, let's show people working. And I'm like, I hate these shows. Like, no. But this one here, like, kind of broke the mold for me a little bit, and it got me into it. It were like shows like Cutthroat Kitchen that would come out later. You know, I love that show too, because Alton Brown and just like the challenges that they have to do, the adversity with which they have to present a dish. It's just that show's amazing. If you haven't watched Cutthroat Kitchen, go watch it. It's amazing.
It
Um,
sounds familiar. I don't think I've actually watched it yet though, because I don't have a cable subscription, just an internet subscription and a bunch of
it's
streaming
on Hulu.
services.
If you have Hulu, it's on Hulu.
Oh, cool. Good to know. Okay, so I'll have to like borrow my sister's Hulu login to watch it. There's also like the Tommy and Pam series that I want to watch on Hulu too. So there's a number of reasons why I should be using Hulu right now.
Yeah, I need to bundle it up because I just got ESPN. I had Disney Plus, so I need to kind of put it all and consolidate it into one bill. That would be kind of good.
Yeah, no, same. But yeah, so like with like just talking about like Gordon Ramsay as like an inspiration for like a bunch of different shows that have come out, including the one that you mentioned, Cutthroat Kitchen. Like there's a bunch of different restaurant reservation shows that have popped up out of nowhere. Like are you familiar with Robert Irvine? From the Food Network, I think, or the Cooking Network.
I've heard of him before, but I've never watched his show.
So yeah, he does this other show called Restaurant Impossible, and it's
Oh, okay.
essentially him doing the same shtick as Gordon Ramsay does on Kitchen Nightmares, and there's a lot like shows like that, especially like for American audiences, from what I could tell. They focus more on like the ethos of like in getting the audience to react emotionally to the plight of these restaurant owners, and there's always sort of like either a heel or a villain in the show that gets
Yeah.
blamed for all of the restaurant's troubles. Like, have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's always this bad, disgruntled cook who's been there way too long, and he's just like, "I know what I'm doing," and then Gordon comes in and he's like, No, you don't.
He's
Or
like, you've lost the love of cooking. Let me like reinvigorate that fire. I want to see some passion. Like, it's like he's just like he just like is really like over the top and like how he like tries to drum up the energy of that moment.
well, I think he also knows how to push the right buttons with people. It's like not necessarily to antagonize them, but sometimes it does, but sometimes that works. You know, people react differently to different kinds of pressure, and I think he is really good at figuring out the situation and knowing what type of pressure to apply to certain situations, because like you have an owner who's like refusing to change his menu or to add, little wrinkles in here and there. It's the same food they've been serving for 30 years, and he comes in and says, hey guys, that's not how you do it. You got to change it up, make it fresh, have a weekly, monthly special. You got to do other things. So
Yeah, no, you're hitting the nail on the head, especially like because I've been like binge watching, or I guess like binge playing various episodes of Kitchen Nightmares this past week while I'm playing video games. It's just like, background noise to help me
oh,
focus and stuff.
yeah, yeah, I like
And
doing that.
like yeah, no, and the reason I bring that up is because like I'm just constantly noticing like these patterns of like storytelling in every episode where, to your point, like the disgruntled chef and like, the menu that hasn't changed in like 30 years and the reluctant owner to change anything because they're like, oh, what about our regular customers? What about like the legacy of my family and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to like, be a failure like to my family and my kids and blah, blah, blah. Like it's all this like all this extra, context that the end product almost has nothing to do with because they're essentially marketing the restaurant to a whole new audience that will not have any like attachment to those concerns that the people on the show are calling out. So it kind of feels like uh commodifying that ethos of like these people like down on their luck and this is their last resort, and then kind of like cashing in on that in order to get people to uh, notice it and be intrigued enough to talk about it, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it makes for good television at the end of the day, and I think that's the most important part of the show. It's just it's really nice, and that's why I like the home improvement restoration shows are big and stuff like that. Or it's like you got these beat ass homes. It's just, oh man, run down, all this kind of stuff, and they come in, spend a few bucks, and pretty up the place. So it's always good, and you find out stuff about, like, the thing I like about Kitchen Nightmares is that you learn a lot about like operational stuff. It
Yes.
doesn't beat you over the head, but you learn like kind of how a restaurant runs. Like that's really important because there is a hierarchy. I mean, they talk about it in Ratatouille, which is funny. But there's a hierarchy of the kitchen, of course, and then not only that, but the stations. To where, like, if you're working one too many stations, and I've dealt with this recently. Anytime somebody calls out at my work, guess who's working, two jobs today instead of one. So I mean, it could be fun, and that's why I like certain places like McDonald's where they have tons of staff and they could just kind of plug somebody in for fries, and that's all you do is fries, or In and Out, where milkshakes. That'd be a fun job though, milkshakes. I can't
Yeah, no,
complain
what
about
you're talking
milkshakes.
about, like in terms of like infrastructure of like restaurants, it's definitely something that like me as like the end, consumer doesn't often think about. And to be honest, I've been a little bit distant from the service industry, especially like with food service for like a few years now. So the base, like the brass tacks of, having experienced like the customer service role and not just like having the basic, human decency to not treat, customer service people shitty. Like that's instilled in me. But then also like, the operational ins and outs and infrastructure stuff is something that has been slowly sort of like, like growing more and more distant in like my memory. Like, oh yeah, there are people like in the background, producing like this like end product for me that, it's not just, the person at the cashier, it's also this whole like organization behind the scenes that is also like keeping the gears running too.
Yeah, a complete operation. And that's nice. I like that structure in a place. Like certain places I've worked at, like McDonald's was a good one for structure. Taco Bell, not so much. That was more of like a kind of fly by the seat of your pants, and we'll get some burritos out, hopefully. um, it's not as structured as far as as McDonald's is. But then again, you got people that work at McDonald's for, especially when I started. It might not be the same now, but when I started 20 years ago, people had worked there for 20 years. They've been there for a long time. The higher ups, not like just your normal cashier. Of course, they'd move on, but those managers had been in place for years. So that's the kind of stability and structure that helps make a good product, especially when you're cranking out food all the time. Um, the change now, and this is also funny because I've been in the service industry since I left school. I think I've had one job that wasn't service. It was an office job, but everything else, when I worked on cars, it's the same thing. It's just a different medium, basically. It's like, food's one thing, cars are another, and we kind of need both to get by in, unless you're in a city or something like that, where public transit, walking, something like that is prevalent and available. I've lived in towns where it's like I lived 30 miles away from town, and the only way I can get into town was with a car. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Like, and then we're going to jump into the episode for Kitchen Nightmares, which I did not give Brian a heads up on what episode it is, or what the story arc is, or anything like that. So it'll be like fresh reactions. He may have seen it in the past, so he may remember parts of it, but I'm not. I didn't give him any context beforehand, other than we're going to watch Kitchen Nightmares and talk about
no,
it.
I said surprise me. She asked me if I was any episodes. Like, no, surprise me. I like the fresh reaction. That's part of the fun of being on YouTube. Honestly, is the kind of doing your own Mystery Science Theater 3000 action.
That's what's up. Yeah, no, I am super excited. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and watch this episode. One of my favorites for sure, and it's on YouTube, so there are gonna be some ads that I'll skip through. We won't watch the whole episode. We'll skip through it and kind of dissect it as we go. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm gonna go ahead and restart it. And
nice. An Italian restaurant.
but yeah,
Yeah,
I'll go
I've
ahead
been
and
there.
pause it.
I've been there. When it gets really tense and somebody asks me something and it just doesn't land well, and I'm just like, okay, hang on a second here. Before I blow up, let's take a breather.
Yeah. No, like for me, like the little intro snippet, like basically these are two guys, they're twins, obviously. They're running this Italian restaurant that they bought from an older couple. And yeah, like the sign says, it was open since 1963, but they are recent owners of the restaurant. So that, to Brian's point, like he pretty much like called out a lot of the themes that are in this episode, surprisingly, without any hints. Like, they basically copy pasted everything that the previous owners had, like, and assumed that they would mimic the same success that the previous owners did, which for a smaller restaurant, maybe that like will fly with like their legacy customers, but for acquiring new customers, not so much. Like, what do you think,
Yeah.
Brian?
Well, yeah, and exactly. And that's the problem. And this is one of the things that with like Hickville. Hey, I grew up in Hickville. But no, it's like the common tropes for these. But the thing about it is the new customer aspect is very important, especially when you're in service, because a lot of times what happens is when you rely on the older customers, unfortunately, a lot of times they literally die off. Like, when business dies off, that it's a it's like, hey, it's getting slow. No, this is like when I worked on cars, it was a lot of the older ladies that would bring their cars to our shop and stuff like that. So when we had that base of customers, was constantly dwindling. So you have to keep it fresh. You have to invigorate things. I mean, it especially with food. I mean, if fast food restaurants didn't do monthly promos, like, I don't know, it would be so different.
Oh, dude, and let's like not even like talk about like this episode was clearly like, maybe 10 years before DoorDash was a thing. That's also like a marketing platform that a lot of restaurants rely on too, like Uber Eats and Grubhub, all those ones that, are giving you that native audience of people on their devices looking for something nearby to get delivered to them. So that's another thing too that a lot of um, non like franchise restaurants really need to adapt to is like, you know, getting on social media, making sure you're on these delivery apps, and like, yeah, to the point you were trying to make, like, you know, making sure that you're promoting your product and, you know, having some incentives to draw in new clientele all the time, which none of this like, even like without the apps in the equation, this restaurant has failed to do. So I'll go ahead and like play some more of the clip. Mindful of like the content and trying to, you know, be as critiquing on it as possible while we're watching it. But yeah, like first impressions on these owners, Brian.
Well, I mean, they seem like nice guys. You know, it feels like, and that's a lot of times they mean well. A lot of, you know, with these shows, it's like they mean well. It's just that I don't think they know how to put that together.
Yeah, no, it like I was saying, like these guys like were basically customers of like the restaurant with the previous owners. The restaurant went on sale and they decided to buy it and just pretty much like use the same menu but had no previous restaurant or cooking experience prior to, you know, buying the restaurant. So yeah, just imagine being like a restaurant, like all of a sudden you're a restaurant owner, and then whatever little like home recipe skills that you had, you have to kind of like turn that into a profitable restaurant. That's
Yeah,
what these guys are
multiply
doing.
it. Well, and that's
Yeah.
the thing is a lot of people will do that. They'll be like, "Hey, I'm going to buy me a restaurant," not having any clue how to run a restaurant. So when you do that and you don't know how to run a restaurant, you have to hire people who do, and that kind of cuts into your bottom line. So
Yeah, actually paying staff to that are, you know, responsible, trustworthy, that, you know, will allow you to be more hands off and, you know, maybe come in every day, if not like every other day, and you know, survey the area and know that, you know, it's in good hands. Like those folks cost money. Like in my experience working as like a key holder, I was essentially a manager on duty, like whenever I would open the store or close it, because we only had like the owner, a manager, and then like the key holders, including like me and maybe a couple other folks. So the reason I bring that up is because like I well, to be totally honest, like when I was in food service, I would take full advantage of no management other than me being on duty. Like
well,
I
of
would
course.
eat all the food, you know, wait till the last minute to clean anything, like, you know, kind of slack off, like be on
Well,
my
the
phone
cat's
the
away, the
entire
mice will
time.
play, you know?
Yeah, no, because like back then I was only making like 850 like at most an hour, like and this is like in Northern California, minimum wage, while I was like, you know, tasked with, you know, counting the drawers, doing inventory, accepting, you know, shipments and all this other, you know, like um what I would consider, you know, like management level, if not owner level, you know, like responsibilities, and getting paid the absolute bare minimum. So obviously, like I am going to do the bare minimum if I'm getting paid the bare minimum, you know?
Of course. Exactly. But no, that's like the whole thing. So if you're going to be an owner operator, you better know what you're doing. Is
Totally. And like in your experience, have you mostly been like in the management, you know, like realm, or have you like kind of had all the different, you know, levels of like worker?
I've never gone as far as general manager. The furthest I've went is assistant manager, and I don't think I'll ever go any higher than that, unless it's the situation's right. Um, I've gotten better over the years, just about like keeping my temper under fire, because no, when kitchens get intense or when jobs get intense, people kind of revert to the bare minimum of you know attitude at that point, where it's you know, it's just 1 second away from like the next customer says something to me, I'm out this door right now, like. So I mean it could get really intense, unfortunately. But as far as like being a manager, I've always been a hands-off manager, laid back, just kind of let my people do what they need to do. That's one of the things that I've always loved, is just a crew that knows what's up. It makes the job go smooth. It makes everything go smooth. You can always delegate training. You can, you know, get cleaning done properly. So it was always stuff like that. But no, I was with you. Like when I was manager, I would just do the bare ass minimum, especially when I was 18, 19. Like I didn't care. I was like, ah, whatever. These jobs are a dime a dozen. It doesn't matter, dude. One time, 4th of July, it was dead slow. 4th of July usually is. There was a fireworks stand. This is in Sacramento. There's a fireworks stand on the other end of the parking lot. So we traded Taco Bell for fireworks. We started lighting off Piccolo Pizza in the drive-through. Um, yeah, it was bad. I left, and then somebody broke a cabinet door, and then I got in trouble. So it was bad. But I had it coming.
Yeah, no, like for me, I even though like I did, kind of abdicate a lot of like my responsibilities as like a quote unquote, like manager on duty most of the time. I did get a lot of flack for when things like, went sideways. Like in my day, like I took a lot of like fake money because I didn't, have like proper skills on how to identify fake bills other than like some rules of thumb to like keep in mind. But as someone again who was getting paid the bare minimum, I'm not going to be too mindful to like do a full like investigation on a $50 bill. So those got over on me pretty frequently, and I unfortunately got in trouble for those as well. But what's interesting too though is to your point about people working in fast food places for like years and years and years. Yeah, that's basically what I experienced too in the food industry, especially like when I worked at Subway. There would be folks that who would be there, for like several years at a time because like they're either like close to the owner, they're able to control their schedule. And it's a very like routine type of work that is easy for them to manage. So it was with older folks too that this like job sort of like filled the need for a 40-hour a week paycheck or consistent paycheck on their schedule that they could easily take time off for if they needed to because they had that relationship with the owner. So that was kind of another bonus for having like a more of like a close knit sort of like smaller um, group of folks like working in a restaurant setting as well, like that camaraderie and that ability to sort of have somewhat of a sense of freedom to be able to make your schedule and then also take time off when you need to because you have that rapport with the owner.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, see you later, ACS.
Take it
And
easy, Anthony.
what's up, Chillmonger? Yeah,
Hey.
we'll go ahead and jump back to the episode. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit to to the food reviews from Gordon Ramsay. These are sometimes always my favorite. So yeah. Okay. So like to the credit of like smaller restaurants though, the holes in the wall places like can throw it down when it comes to food.
Oh no,
Like even
those are
even
some
though
of
they
my
might be kind of
favorites.
dirty and run down and stuff,
Yeah,
especially like Mexican food, Chinese food places, like yeah, totally. Like they might not you might not want to sit in there to eat, but you'll definitely take your food to go,
I'll get to go. I'll take out any day of the week, especially like any burrito place in just where that's their specialty.
Mhm.
They might have cats running around in the back, but
Yes.
hey, their food is fantastic. Don't sleep on it. Same thing with like Chinese food.
Yep.
There could be like live chickens running around in the back. Just like,
Yes.
yeah, go ahead, kill it right now, cook it up. I'll eat it. We're good.
That's literally the vibe. Like so like around where I live there are some liquor stores that have restaurants in them, and
Mhm.
they often have like street cats or street dogs walk in because like they're friendly with the owners and the owners will feed them, so obviously they'll come back. And yeah, to Chillmonger's point, it's all about the kitchen. So as long as like the kitchens are like serving the food, and like it doesn't really matter to me too much about like the exterior. But I am someone who does like to sit down at a restaurant if I'm physically walking to the restaurant to pick up food and it's not like a drive-through situation or like a McDonald's or whatever. Like I would like to sit down most of the time. So seeing this sort of atmosphere, like in Capri, like I might opt to take my food to go, but I definitely won't be turned off personally by this atmosphere. I don't know if like it's
No,
different for
no.
you, Brian.
I know I'm from small town California. Like we had little hole in the wall places with the same brown 70s plastic cups that they've had, for days. They're my favorite pizza place in Grass Valley, California, Frank's Pizza. Oh, that place, total hole in the wall, but the best damn pizza ever. The lights are low. It's just like everything looks like it still did in the 1980s when I would go there as a kid after the races. Like, oh man. But Frank's Pizza, if you ever get the opportunity to go to Grass Valley, California, beautiful little go to rush town, fantastic pizza. Just
Oh, I'll have to look it up because I'm over in the Bay Area. But in my experience, growing up, we had Straw Hat Pizza. Do you remember them? Yeah,
we had one
Straw
in
Hat.
Sacramento. It was pretty good. I dug Straw Hat.
Yeah, totally. Like with Straw Hat, they had those like translucent brown cups that I remember. Like the Coke from the fountain just tasted a little bit better out of those cups. I don't know why. It's like
It's
using the same
weird.
pan like for years and years and years. That's that
It gets
pan that makes everything
that
taste good.
seasoning. Yeah, the
Yes, that
seasoning in the pan.
experience.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Well, and then those chairs, the like brown leather, fake leather, and they got the
Yes.
metal rim on the outside.
Yeah.
Oh man, and a napkin dispenser on the table.
I
Get
love it.
some, man. Like
All the
it gets.
brown pepper shakers and the white salt shakers right
Oh,
next to them, the little
yes,
plastic ones.
yes.
Yes, that's
Oh,
the seal of quality right there.
if you've got that 1980s aesthetic in 2022, I will eat at your restaurant. Just know
Oh
this.
yeah. Oh man, I'm like fiending for Straw Hat now. I have like Straw Hat, Round Table. Those were where I had a lot of like my birthday parties, like up to like when I was like 8 years old, like because they also had arcades in them too. So like this type of restaurant that we're seeing in Capri, I would have expected to see like a couple arcade cabinets in it as well. Like if nothing else, if you can't offer like atmosphere, like in and of itself within the restaurant, at least add some arcade cabinets to like kind of fill in the gaps of that atmosphere and just encourage people to stay a little bit longer, maybe order more food and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. That's what happened with Frank's. There was an owner that took over and they didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, to Zod's point, this episode is pretty much like, the brothers taking over the restaurant, and the legacy is basically keeping it open with their past customers, but they're not doing themselves any favors to encourage new business. But yeah, we'll go ahead and continue the episode. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to the food sampling. Fault. Okay, cool. I will go ahead and stop the screen. That is totally my fault. I apologize, y'all.
It's all good.
For policy violations. Yep. The stream unavailable icon. I'm going to type in the chat really quick.
Hold on.
I was playing a dangerous game, but yeah.
It lasted a while. Shoot.
It did, yeah. I was doing my best to, be as transformative on the content as I could. Policy violations. God damn it. Okay, so I wonder if this will resolve on its own or not. Let's see.
That's a good question. Have you gotten any emails or anything?
I will check.
I don't know. Worst comes to worst, just shut it down, fire it up, and we'll just talk about it.
After copyrighted material is no longer being streamed, streams are automatically re-enabled. Okay. Yeah, I know I've caught a few streams like with Jarbo and like Enosh where the stream became unavailable for a few minutes and then it became back online. So yeah.
Gotcha. So should be back on soon enough.
Yeah, no, do you think based off what we watched so far that you have enough context to talk about the episode a little bit more, even though we didn't get to watch too much? Okay.
Well,
cool.
we've kind of been talking about it for the most part anyway. So like as far as just like the general tropes of the show and like how they're going with what direction they're going to take. It's pretty much self-explanatory what's going to happen. You see a little bit of their food, and it's like, those look like those Foster Farms little frozen chicken tenders you get.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right.
And I'm
And then
like,
I could pull up an article on like, oh, where are they now and stuff, like, because I love those update episodes for sure.
oh yeah, where they go back and they're like, hey, so and
Mhm.
so fixed their restaurant, and it's not a pile anymore. They're so busy they don't know what to do with themselves.
Oh, I think we're back. Yay. Thank y'all. Yeah, that was totally on me. I streamed too much of the content at once, and even though I was trying to speak over it, so um live and learn, I guess, for the future. But yeah, no, me and Brian were just talking about how we can kind of chop up this episode and give our thoughts around, some things that they could improve that actually do happen, and where they are now. So yeah, Brian, what are some thoughts just based off of what we've seen so far in the episode?
What we've seen so far, I mean, it's really tropey, but that's fine. That's what this show is. Where at the beginning, I could kind of almost stereotype how the episode's going to be based on what I've watched from the show, just in general. Uh, People who are a fan of a restaurant buy a restaurant, not knowing what they're doing, and they get in over their heads, and unfortunately, that happens a lot. And it's a real sad thing to see when that restaurant closes down that everybody loves. So
Yeah, no, like I think Chillmonger called out that on the pizza, the toppings weren't necessarily baked all the way into the crust, and from my recollection on this episode, they buy pre-made crusts, which I mean, pre-made crust is totally fine as long as like you assemble the ingredients in-house yourself. Canned sauce, I'm not like bougie or too discerning about ingredients. They don't have to be the freshest, as long as like you season it well. Like it can all be frozen and in a can for all I care. Like because I've seen magic happen with folks who do know how to cook, turn these purchased ingredients into something good. Brian, you look
pre-prepped
like you're about to.
ingredients.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I prefer more of the authentic route. I mean, if you're gonna run an Italian restaurant, the least thing you need to know how to do is make marinara sauce. Sorry, like there's a rule. You don't want to have your own canned anything. They're a prerequisite. You should have at least a slicer of some kind and a cheese grater.
That's
Because if you're
fair.
buying pre-bagged cheese and you're buying pre-cut ingredients, aside from like olives and maybe mushrooms, if that's your thing, you should at least have some kind of a meat slicer to where you can slice your own fresh pepperonis, fresh salami, fresh Canadian bacon, whatever it be, or ham or whatever. Um, that is something that, it might cost a little more in certain cases, but some cases it doesn't. Like an unsliced tomato is a lot cheaper than diced tomato that's been like moisture preserved in that, like Taco Bell, a perfect example. They had bagged lettuce, prepackaged tomatoes, and that's not a bad thing, but I'm just saying, like, it kind of takes away from that authentic Italian experience when you're not putting that kind of love into it. And I think that's what made that place successful in the first place, is because the original owners put that kind of love in it.
Yeah, no, like let's just consider that, like, the restaurant was opened in the 60s, and maybe like cost to, acquire these ingredients, and prep time and all this other stuff, and cost, like, just like the overhead was a lot, more manageable and probably feasible, and rent was probably cheaper too for them too.
Yeah.
And they were probably one of the last, or one of the only, like, Italian restaurants in the neighborhood. So a lot, they had that native foot traffic, as a given in this, in this neighborhood. Whereas fast forward to like, the mid 2000s, where, pizza places are everywhere. It's like really
Yeah.
mainstream. And you got folks who, in this, like, little hick town in nowhere, California, that a lot of younger people move out of, and the older folks who used to go there a lot are dying off, like you mentioned earlier. So and on top of that, you got the rising costs for operations and food costs and like employee costs and rent and yeah, your overhead to run is a lot, you know, lower, to the point that these guys like couldn't even be open for lunch because of like the costs and they're just like in, and plus like on top of like their laziness too of like being unwilling to even be in the building during those hours. They just refuse to like open like any earlier than dinner. But to the point that I'm trying to make is like, you know, there's also like valid concerns there too about, you know, the operating costs as well that we don't really get to see too much on Kitchen Nightmares.
No, that's very true. They kind of touch on it a little bit, but to get into like the meat and potatoes of it all, like no pun intended. Uh, no, it's a real trip. If you're talking like P&L statements and like, you know, actually looking into the operations of a business, it's very similar to other businesses, you know, because you have your costs, your overhead, all that kind of stuff, but you also have, you know, other bits and pieces that make the whole. No, and it's a shame because I wanted to see how they handled the rush, but I can kind of picture it in my head, like them just getting completely swamped and like just losing all that cool that they had in the beginning. They were kind of doing it before, like they're arguing over who's going to bring him water. It's like, um, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah. That's like they're bickering and bantering for the episode for sure. But what I did also want to call out too is like um to the point that you were making where it would be preferred for, you know, pizza places and Italian food places to make things from scratch as often as possible because sometimes the cost can be comparable if not lower to just buying it, you know, prepared. I wanted to ask, like, do you have experience working at like pizza places in the past, right?
I've never worked at a pizza place yet. Unfortunately, that's one of the ones I won't, just because I don't want to ruin it. When I work at a restaurant, most of the time it ruins the food for me. Like Arby's, I'll never eat at Arby's again. It's it's nothing personal. I hate their roast beef, and that's like that's their staple. And their roast beef is disgusting. So I won't mess with it anymore. Uh, I'll still eat it like Burger King and stuff like that. Taco Bell, I won't go out of my way for. Uh, that's just it's Spanglish food, and I just don't want to deal with it. It's not quite Mexican. It's not quite American. Spanglish.
Yeah, no. The reason I ask is because I'm like, I remember oftentimes defending Little Caesars like on and off in like different streams, and that you happen to be a part of. Like, I'm always in the chat, like, you know, calling Little Caesars the goat because, you know, in my heart, you know, they saved me from hunger like many a night in my
Uh,
past.
a $5 hot and ready is nothing to stick your nose up to. If I have the choice and I have the money, I will not go to Little Caesars. Uh, their pizza is plain Jane, and like they'll get other stuff like the Batman calzone. It's still a Little Caesars pizza. The
Yeah.
sauce is the same. All that stuff's the same.
Have you had that already?
uh, no, I haven't. But it's a thin crust pizza from Little Caesars. The thin crusts are my favorite actually. The nice thin crust on those pizzas, it's really really good. No, I get like I said, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes Tony, sometimes like pre-made ingredients at places are cheaper, especially if you got a distributor that sells them at wholesale prices. You know, there's places that'll go out and get stuff from farmers markets. You know, I tend to like that a little bit. I mean, there's authenticity there. It's you know, I know like 90% of the pizza places I go to have all, you know, uh, prepared or you know pre-packaged ingredients and stuff like that. It saves time, it saves prep, it saves cleanup. There's just a lot that it you know it cuts out. So
But yeah, like back to like kind of like discussing this restaurant. I'm going to try and look up where they're at. Well, like I can actually just sort of like shoot off some like details that I know for where they're at now. Well, the restaurant is closed now, but it's not to the detriment of lack of caring or effort from the owners. They actually stayed open up until 2019. and
Mm.
they closed pre-pandemic due to uh, the twins' parents needing more hands-on care in
Ah,
at home.
gotcha. Yeah.
And yeah, they decided to close the business and focus on that. And that's pretty admirable for them to do that.
No, that's
And
fair. That's yeah, that's
yeah,
not
that's a
bad.
pretty fair response. And funny enough, Ramsey actually showed up to their final day of being open, which is really cool. I think he has a restaurant near in LA, which is like near Eagle Rock, where the restaurant, where Capri, the restaurant we were watching the episode for, is located. But yeah, like just to know that, like, okay, this episode came out, I think it was like in the early 2010s, and then they lasted another like few years afterwards. I'm thinking like from what I saw during their restaurant closing celebration thing, they pretty much kept the same renovations from what Ramsey gave them, and the paper menus, like they continue to like print off different versions of the menus and stuff, which I think is the right move for restaurants that are smaller, that have a rotating like seasonal like availability of like different foods and goods and stuff,
Hmm.
depending on the ingredients that are available. And another thing too that I was like curious to hear your thoughts on, Brian, is that like in like these smaller hole in the wall restaurants in like working class towns, I noticed that they're more willing to have like a lower uh price on the menu for some of their items. Like let's say like street tacos, like in LA, at least like in my experience in the last year, I can get like 5 tacos for $5 from like a cart on the street. And
Hmm.
anywhere else, like in like bougier parts of like LA, if not like San Francisco, I'm paying like $2 a taco. Like I don't, have you like had that experience before?
Yes. And see, this is why I like living in small towns, man. I like that smaller community feel. That's why I like the smaller mom and pop restaurants over the bigger chains. Like, so let's say in that town they put a freaking Olive Garden there. What's gonna happen? Everybody's gonna go to the damn Olive Garden, and nobody's gonna go to the mom and pop place. So it's like, it's that whole like Walmart destroying towns kind of thing. It's like when big business comes in, it kind of muscles out little business, and it kind of just, dang it, man. Can we just have this small mercantile society? Go back to that. Like,
Oh yeah, no, you're speaking my language for sure. And like I'm thinking of like all these like blue collar towns like near where I grew up in the Bay Area, that Walmart is pretty much the main store, like the
it's
grocery store that everyone goes to.
it's the store. That's it. There's nothing else. Like that. My town has my hometown has a moratorium against Walmart.
A what?
A moratorium, which means that they will not allow them to build a Walmart in town.
Oh, okay, that's really
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah, I never heard of that before.
It's to preserve Main Street, because Main Street in Grass Valley is historic. Everything there is from the 1850s.
Oh,
Gold.
cool. So like during
Uh,
like the gold rush
yeah,
days or
it
whatever.
was a gold rush town. Grass Valley, Nevada City pulled a lot of gold out of them hills. And not too far from there is where they did hydraulic mining, which was really, really bad for the environment.
Yikes. Rip.
Yeah, they just shoot water at the side of a mountain and let all that run downstream, downriver, to where Sacramento would flood every year.
Aw, dang.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
But
why old Sacramento is built up on stilts. Like
oh, I didn't know that.
the whole town is like 10 feet taller. Is up against the riverfront, but yeah,
No, that's yeah, no, like the part about like preserving the main street though is like something that I kind of wish more places would adopt, because it's something that's like in the smaller towns that we were talking about, where like food is a lot more accessible because it's cheaper, and you're also supporting like independent business owners who already have like the rising costs of like of overhead and food costs and like utilities and all this other stuff, like against them too. Like how are they supposed to compete like with like like the McDonald's and the like uh like Pizza Huts and like Little Caesars of the world that are still able to afford to like offer like quantity over quality, let's say,
Well,
for
not
a
only
lot of like
that,
their menu.
but those franchise chains, they can afford to have a place in a small town that loses money because they have a place in a big town that makes money gangbusters, you know. So it's really messed up for the smaller companies. It's like video stores that went out because of Blockbuster, or any, like I said, anytime the big companies move in, it ruins that small business. And it, back to the restaurant thing, there's just nothing that can replicate that small restaurant feel, especially once you start, you know. The Olive Garden does not feel, it's like Applebee's, eating good in the neighborhood, your hometown Applebee's. It's like Applebee's does not feel like a hometown to me, okay? Because I could go 2 hometowns over and get the same damn food at an Applebee's. Like, no, dude,
Yeah.
this isn't eating
Yeah,
good in the
definitely.
neighborhood, man. It's microwaved food.
Yeah, I've noticed that there are like there's a surge of like these places that are marketing like their atmosphere and like being like community gathering places. Like there's this there's like this restaurant chain called Yard House, which is like similar to TGI Fridays, but their atmosphere is a lot more open. The staff there are like really friendly and cordial, and they offer like a huge selection of draft beers and
Hmm.
things like that. So it's a family restaurant that also offers like a diverse like age set of appealing factors for everyone to make that their hometown restaurant that everyone wants to go to. And I've noticed them popping up like not only like in Northern California but in Southern California too. So I'm also wondering like um if places like this and like other restaurants like to your point about Applebee's and like Chili's and like all these other places that are kind of like these hangout spots for diverse group sets, they're selling that they're selling the atmosphere rather than the food. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, especially with TGI Fridays. Have you had the food there? No, it's a bar for college kids, basically. I've been to Fridays a bunch of times with a bunch of college when I was, that age, and yeah, we'd go hang out at Apple or at Fridays, and then go to the club, hang out for a bit, and then call it a night. That was a Friday. No, you brought that up though about the one of the restaurants that are kind of a thing now, or were probably 5-10 years ago, microbreweries.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like I forgot about that like little subcategory. Like what were you gonna speak on for it?
Well, like you have BJ's, which is the chain, but
Yes,
then it
BJ's Brew House or whatever. Like, yeah.
yeah, but see, that is like corporate food for me. It's like, okay, whatever. But like a local brew or ale house that makes their own beer in house. Like there's a couple places. Sac Brew Company is one in Sacramento. They have 2 locations, I think. Fantastic. There's the beer samplers are always great. Like that's one of the things that's always good. Being an adult at those places, they have stuff for the kids, like you say. It's a family environment. There's TVs on the wall. There's noise going on. People are having a good time. That's kind of like going to Buffalo Wild Wings, just because that, like you
Yes,
said, they're
that
selling the
atmosphere.
atmosphere. It's just like I love being in a place like that because it's happening, it's hopping. It's like, yes, let's do this. And you got sports on every wall. I mean, even if you're not a sports fan, it's like, hey, all right, this is cool.
Yes, exactly. You're kind of jogging my memory on like, I'm not necessarily like a fan of sports, but I like the atmosphere of like sports bars because
Oh, they're
everyone is just,
fun.
drinking, having a good time. Like randos are like coming up and saying like, "Hey, y'all want to take a shot with me?" blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, it's
pool, darts, like
yeah,
anything like that, man. Like any bar that has a pool table
chicken
or
wings.
something like that, and has food available, like burgers, pub food. I mean, come on, dude. I love that kind of stuff. So like, I'm gonna have to figure out when the next pub crawl is downtown here in Reno, because there's so many nice on Virginia Street. That's where all the casinos and stuff are. But there's a bunch of little restaurants and stuff off to the side. Man, like I just wanted. I like that experience so much. And add to it a little bit of a buzz from some pretty decent beer. Yeah, no, it's really good. Um,
Not to like
The
villainize Mel's Diner, like a really like well-known chain of restaurants. Like they're another kind of like corporate,
Johnny
atmosphere. Not
Rockets,
yeah, Johnny Rocket selling selling a narrative about like nostalgia and the experience of like sitting in a booth, like surrounded
50s
by
diner.
50s diner vibes, and like the chrome like fixtures and everything like that, and the nice like vinyl seating.
They
I've never
tried
been
doing
to
that with
like a dirty
A&W.
one. Oh, and like the malts and the milkshakes and stuff, like just how they present the food too is like also really nostalgic. And like even though like I didn't grow up in that era, like I grew up with like TV shows that like told me what that era was like, so I'm
Oh,
getting
Happy Days.
like secondhand nostalgia almost from that.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, like it's like making me like super like excited to like want to go back to those places. But now that like we're actually dissecting and talking about like, hey, this is actually like a veneer of like and there's also like a bunch of different restaurants that have been put out of business because of this like facade of this fake facade that this
Yeah.
restaurant is marketing to you. I'm just like, oh man, the reality is sinking in.
Right. Okay, so like when we were in last time, one of the last times I went to San Francisco, we went to Fisherman's Wharf at like 8 in the morning,
Yeah.
and nothing is open that early. Um, so the only place to eat was Johnny Rockets. Disappointed to say the least. Yeah. There was one place, like I went down there to watch a 49er game with my mom. This is a long time ago, like 2001. There was this little tiny place, and they made the best breakfast, just like hands down. And that's another place. Like small breakfast places are my jam. They're so much better than like your Denny's. Any with exception of like Black Bear Diner, but that place is really good.
Oh yeah, Black Bear Diner. Yeah, they're great too. They I guess like I could be a little bit wrong cuz like I'm not too familiar with Black Bear, but like they're kind of selling the narrative of like big American style breakfast with like I don't know if like pancakes are a staple, but maybe like hash browns and like a country fried
Biscuits and
steak with
gravy,
biscuits and
hearty
gravy.
breakfast. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
like a Paul Bunyan style breakfast, basically big manly
yes,
man
big
breakfast.
thick slab of ham.
Yeah, yeah, like to like 4 or 5 egg or 3 or 4 eggs on a plate. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's where it's at. I love those kind of places. Any kind of greasy spoons is what I like to call them. Just going down to the greasy spoon, get yourself some shit on a shingle, which is really good, by the way. It's beef gravy on toast.
Oh dang! No,
Yeah.
I don't think I've had that per se. Biscuits and gravy though are a Jimmy Jam for sure, especially like on a Sunday morning after spending all night drinking previously.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And those are the best types of food to have in the morning after a night of frivolity.
Debauchery.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, but to kind of wrap up on the restaurant, it's kind of a shame to see stuff like that happen because with the bigger chains or stuff like that, I mean, people will drive 20 miles to go to a place like that, you know. And I love the shows like um Kitchen Nightmares and Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives,
Yes.
Man versus Food.
Mhm.
Anywhere where people go to the restaurants to show people those small hometown restaurants. Like, for example, in Sacramento, there's a place called Dad's Kitchen. It was on Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives. They have a great microbrew menu. I like usually have 20 to 30 different kinds. Every time I go down and visit my mom, that's where we eat. Yeah.
That's a good point that you mentioned. Like, as much as like I've called out Kitchen Nightmares and other shows for like exploiting like the ethos of like these poor down on their luck owners, they are at least getting like some publicity for further exposure for their um, their unique brand that they bring to the world, and hopefully that helps them reach, like I mentioned, reach new audiences, and then also like continue to put their product out because as convenient as bigger brands are, and like the fun that that they market to their consumers like me. Like I'm a fan of like BJ's Brewhouse, TGI Fridays, and Chili's and Applebee's, just because like some of the like the convenient atmosphere that they offer. And some of the consistency of their food. Like I mentioned, like Chipotle a few times on some food streams where like it's not the best Mexican food, but it's a consistent experience that I get every time I
Well,
go there, which is why I
it's like
continue to go.
well, it's
But
like
yeah,
Chevy's. You get the
yeah,
hat on your
yeah,
birthday.
Chevy's, exactly. Yeah, totally.
The food's not that good, but the canteen is awesome, and a couple margaritas. You don't taste the food. What? 5 minutes? That's about how far my mom lived. She lived in Land
Yeah,
Park. Yeah.
totally. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up because I know Brian is a very busy man, and I just want to give him props again for coming on to my show for the first time. I really appreciate you sharing all of your amazing anecdotes. I hope to have you on again really soon.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely. This is
yeah,
fun.
any closing thoughts and where can we find you at?
Well, you can find me on my channel, Brian Master of None. I'll be doing a James Bond stream tomorrow. It should be fun. I'm a huge James Bond fan, so I kind of want to do like a franchise retrospective on it. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Should be 5 o'clock tomorrow Pacific. But this right here has been a hell of a lot of fun. I love talking about food so much on YouTube. Like, I, it's just it's the one thing that brings me joy, especially when I get burnt out on a lot of the other topics that get brought up. So it's a nice escape, and I like bringing. I feel like this brings people together, and I also want to thank you, Rhea, for giving me the name Master of Noms, uh, inspiring me to actually talk about food. So there wouldn't be a Master of Noms if it wasn't for Rhea. So.
Well, well, I appreciate it. I definitely need to come back to your show again. I like to hop it into the chat for sure to show support, but I want to hop on your panel again in the future
Oh,
too. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, we're gonna go ahead and end the show here. Thank y'all so much for watching, and we'll catch y'all later. All right, bye.
Peace.